What up, everybody? Welcome to the stream. Get back to where I need to be. How's everybody doing today? Welcome to our live stream where we're going to be looking at some changes to the 2023 National Electrical Code. This is going to be an ongoing series. Now that we're pretty sure that the 2023 is pretty much is what it is. There was some challenges at the committee stage, but I believe it is what it is. So we're going to start looking at some of these changes, and I'm going to look at them fresh as we go through it. And there's going to be a lot of them, and I'm committed to doing these changes as we move through the adoption of this 2023. So many of you states over the next year are going to have all these adoptions that take place. And I want you to be able to see the change, right? So we want to be able to see what's the difference between what's proposed and what's coming into 2023 and what we've got. And remember, I'm going to, from time to time, I'll cut away and we'll look at your comments, whether you agree or disagree with some of these changes. I really, it doesn't bother me either way. I'm not here to defend what the code panel, especially code panel 2, has done, but it is going to allow us to analyze it for the first time, and we're going to do this. And I thought it would be fun to do it together and, you know, kind of look at the changes and give you my fresh thoughts on them. And again, first time looking really deep at it. I don't serve on code panel 2, and I purposely, obviously some of these I've looked at, but I purposely have kind of stayed away from looking too deeply in it. I don't write any code change books, so they have to be really into it, writing those books. I don't write any of those books. Nobody's ever asked me to write those books, so I'm not authoring those books. So for me, I do video content. So I said to myself, why don't I just wait until I believe that it's just about done deal, and then I will start examining the changes with you folks live. And then people can watch the recordings. And again, you will maybe not agree with what I say. That's fine. The only thing I ask is that you keep it civil, and your opinions are welcome, whether you agree with something or disagree with it. That's a little change. But again, if you get too out of hand, we're gonna go away from that. So what I want you to see is, so we're gonna be looking at the code in the 2020. And then we're going to be looking at the proposed changes in the 2023. So I kind of want to, this is being the first video or the first live stream of this series. What we want to do is show you the format, okay? Show you how this is going to work. And I see some folks are chatting in here. I want to show you what that screen is going to look like. Okay, so when we do some chatting or we have some chat in the future, what it's going to do is it's going to put it here so that we can have the chat displayed so everybody can see it on the stream. I don't believe we have that set up right now. I don't think that I have it all set up right now. Let me double check and see if I've got it set up, because I don't know that I have it fully set up yet. Let's see here. Okay. So we'll have some chat here, and then I'll have some chat here. So I'm just kind of laying down what it's going to look like when we finally get everything all set up and everything. So let's see here. Just kind of getting it all looking, see what we're going to do. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like, and what we'll have is your chat will be here, but right now I can see your chat for me, and I'll answer it, but just wanted to keep you aware moving forward how we were going to integrate chat into the program. Okay, so we will definitely be integrating it in case you wondered. All right, so let's get back to the 2020 NEC. So what we're going to do here is we're going to analyze the changes, and we're going to look at the changes in 210.8. And again, I can see your comments. and I'll be more than happy to answer them and address them. And you probably can see the comments on your respective whatever platform you're watching on. Okay. All right. So first things first, let's look at 210.8. So what we see on the screen is 2020 National Electrical Code language. 210.8 says, again, personnel, says ground fault circuit interrupter protection for personnel shall be provided as required in 210.8A through F. Ground fault circuit interrupters shall be installed in a readily accessible location. And it says, for the purpose of this section, when determining the distance from receptacles, the distance shall be measured as the shortest path the supply cord of the appliance connected to the receptacles will follow without piercing the floor, the wall, the ceiling, the fixed barrier, or the shortest path without passing through a window. So as you remember, in the 2020, we got rid of the doorway and door openings. So that got rid of that. So let's see what the 2023 has to hold for that one. All right, so here's what 2023 is going to look like. It says a listed Class A GFCI shall provide protection in accordance with 210.8A through F. So that's pretty much the same. Didn't change much there. That says the GFCIs shall be installed in a readily accessible location. Okay. One of the changes I notice is that these informational notes are disappearing. So again, we have 4 informational notes here from the previous edition, and they're disappearing here in the 2023 edition. Okay. Remembering that informational notes are what? They're just information. So they are kind of gives you guidance and whatnot. But other than that, it's really not necessary. Also, a lot of the things that were example in 422.5A, which is appliances, is going to be relocating, but we'll see that. So that's why I'm not going to go really deep into these informational notes because they're pointless. They're just going away. Previously, they just gave references to other areas. Now, I serve on Code Panel 17, so we were in charge with the 422 stuff when it came to GFCI, but it looks like they're taking a lot of that control over in 210.8. Hopefully, we reserve the control of that. But anyway, so that's proposed there. Let's see here. Also, you'll notice down in the bottom part, okay, it says, for the purpose of this section, the distance from receptacles shall be measured as the shortest path the power supply cord connected to the receptacle would follow without piercing floors, walls, ceilings, or fixed barriers. Interesting. Let's go back to the 2020. Here we say fixed barriers or the shortest path out without passing through a window. So it looks to me that the shortest path without passing through a window has been removed as far as this aspect of it. So that's a removal, shortened it down a little bit, and just, kind of gets rid of that portion about passing through a window. So that's your change for that there. Okay. Let's go a little bit further and go into the 210.8 stuff. Okay, so here is what we've got for the 2020. It says all 125 volt through 250 volt receptacles installed in the locations specified in 210.8 A1 through A11 and supplied by single-phase branch circuits rated 150 volts or less to ground shall be ground fault circuit interrupter protection. Okay, that's 2020. We're used to that. Also, let me shout out RT is in the room. Thank you, Dylan, LM in the room. Adam is in the room. Okay, welcome to the stream, guys. All right. So as we see here, we're going to look at some of the differences here. So right now it looks like there's 11 items in 210.8A. All right. So we're going to go look at the 2023 proposed and see what's changing here for dwelling units, or what's proposed to be changed. Let's look at it that way. All right. So let's see here. let's see if we can kind of scroll it down a little bit, and we'll see what we've got here. All right, went a little too far. Again, you got to remember, it's hard for me to see both screens, so I want to make sure I catch it. Okay, now this is 2023. So this is what's proposed. So things that are underlined are changes. Obviously, you can see things that are going to be crossed out. And of course, I could hide all these changes so you could just see the clean text, but what's the fun in that, right? We want to see what the proposed language is going to be and how it affects the previous edition. So here is 2023. You see there was 9 public comments on this from, I'm sure, manufacturers, I'm sure stakeholders involved and all that chimed in. Again, it's not just the manufacturers that do this, but again, they have some input and they sit on the committees. So obviously they do have a say. So here's what we've got here. It says all 125 volt through 250 volt receptacles installed in the following locations. And you notice that it struck out the previous one where it says A1 through A11. It says just in the following locations, and supplied by single-phase branch circuits rated 150 volts or less to ground, shall have ground fault circuit interrupter protection for personnel. Okay, no different there. I guess there was no real reason to reference A1 through A11 when it's obviously when it says the following. Okay, that's just probably a style change. Works fine. I don't have any problem with that. Let's see here. Number 1, bathroom. No change in the 2020. Garages and also accessory buildings. So that wasn't changed. A2 is not really a change. Let's see. A3, outdoors. No change. Number 4, crawl spaces at or below grade level. No change. We had that in the 2020. So pretty straightforward. Number 5, basements. Now, basements had an informational note, and then it says receptacles installed under this exception. Okay, all this kind of stuff. All of that looks like that's been stricken. All right, so the exception under A5 is not there anymore. So basements in general are going to require. What does it say back in 2020? Let's go look back at 2020 real quick and just see what we've got. 5. Oh, so in 2020, and remember, folks, you can chime in, give your opinions. Love to have them. In the 2020 code, as you can see right here, it has an exception, and that was for fire alarms and burglar alarm applications, right? So that was for basements. The other interesting thing from the 2017 to the 2020, you notice that it used to be unfinished basements. And of course, now it is just basements in general, that type of thing. A lot of debate over on the TikTok when I did a stream and I said the code is what it is. One of the big arguments that was originally was that basements can flood. It was probably less about the concrete, but that is a role. But they were worried about flooding and all this kind of stuff. Well, to me, a basement's a dry location. I'm not sure why it would be anything else. Even a basement that occasionally floods, it's still would be considered a dry location. Okay, so no different than the receptacles in your bathroom are not in a wet location or even a damp location. It's a bathroom. So anyway, we migrated to basements only, and that means it applies to finished or unfinished basements, right? So that's where we've gone with it. So let's go look at the 2023 a little bit deeper. So exceptions been removed, okay? And everything out like that has been removed. So it's just basements. All receptacles that are 125 volt through 250 volt receptacles that are installed in basements, GFCI protection. And again, that's going to apply to what? NEMA. 125 is a NEMA rating, by the way. 250 is a NEMA rating. So these are 120 volt, 240 volt branch circuits, or even 208, although chances of that being in a dwelling might be slim, but possible. Yeah, okay. But really here, I just need you to remember, if we put that dryer down there, that washing machine down there, and it's not a laundry area, it's just a basement. If there's a receptacle involved, then it's got to be GFCI protected. Okay. The next one is kitchens. Now, interesting. We go back to the 2020 edition. and we look at the 2020 edition, let me scroll down a little bit for you so we can kind of get more of that on the screen. If you look at the 2020 edition, kitchens, it says where the kitchens are installed, or where the receptacles are installed to serve the countertop. So these are all of the receptacles that would have served the countertop wall counter space. These would have been receptacles that serve the island or peninsular countertop space. All of that would have required those receptacles to be protected with GFCI, right? Now, you could have done it at a breaker, but you could also do it at a device on the countertop and then, of course, feed through everything downstream. But we have a change for 2023. Like it, hate it, love to hear your comments. Not going to censor your comments unless you get nasty, but love your comments on this change. So let's look at the 2023 and how that's going to impact us. And I have talked about this one a little bit before. So now you're seeing that kitchens, it struck out the part about serving the countertop. So what does that mean? Well, that means all receptacles now that fall between the 125 through 250 volt receptacle rating that are in a kitchen. Now, this is receptacles now. We're going to see other things later. But as far as receptacles go, you're going to have to GFCI protect it. What are your thoughts on that? I know that a lot of people say this is very much manufacturer driven. And I'm not going to argue that. There's a lot of money to be made with GFCIs. There's a lot of money. Now, they work. No doubt they work. I mean, you know they work. But do we need every receptacle in a kitchen to be GFCI? I don't know. What's your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. And I'm pretty sure the comment thing is not working, so I'm going to go real quick and look at the comments section. Yeah, I'm pretty sure unless somebody types in a comment to let me know it's working, I don't think that's actually working. So I've got some work I have to do on that part of it. But I can see your comments. So, and you can see your comments on whatever, platform you're watching on. Okay. So if you want to comment, feel free. I don't know if they'll appear here or not. So, you gotta kind of let me know. And I'm going to double check real quick. Let's see here if I've got some hold on here. Okay, we'll do this. See if we got some. There's a comment, but it's really small. So bear with me while I try to work on this. Again, once I get it fixed, then it works. It'll work great for all of our future ones. Okay, so just bear with me while I try to get this thing all sorted out real quick, folks. And then we'll get back into these. Trust me, we'll get back into the changes. All right. Anyway, yeah, there's no comments showing up. I don't see them either. So I've got some tweaking I got to do on that. I kind of rushed that, everything. But you can see your comments on whatever platform you're watching on, I'm sure. So let's go back to where we were. And I'll work on that in another. I'll work on that for the future. All right, because y'all don't care. I can see your comments, and I'll respond to your comments. So, Mike, thank you. So we'll just keep rolling on with these changes today. Let's see here. We do have some comments. Giovanni says, would it be better to AFCI, GFCI at the panel? 6 of one, a half a dozen the other. Cost-wise, it's great. I wish Jay was actually in here. And y'all probably know. I don't know the cost changes so far by putting an AFCI in the, and we're all going to go over the AFCI changes as well in another one of these change sessions. But putting an AFCI in the panel and putting a GFCI at the first receptacle in the kitchen, if I'm looking at the cost, I don't know the cost of a GFCI receptacle anymore. Probably $14-15 versus the cost of a dual function AFCI, GFCI dual functions, probably $60. I don't know what the cost is anymore of an AFCI combination where it's just AFCI. And so you'd have that in the panel and then have a GFCI at the first receptacle. They work fine together. The technology works great together. So, but cost-wise, if you want to keep it simple and you don't want to think about it, then yeah, just put a dual function in the panel and just roll with it and weigh the prices and see which one is, price driven, which one works better for you, that type of thing. It's probably what I would say when it comes to that. All right. Let's see. So let's go and look at the next one. So again, kitchens, 2020 code, it only applied to the countertops. 2023, it's going to apply to all receptacles in the kitchen. Okay. All right, the next one is number 7. And remember, we're still talking dwelling units here. It says areas with sinks and permanent provisions for food preparation, beverage preparation, or cooking. So to me, I'm thinking this is picking up those wet bars that previously might not have been in a kitchen and they weren't serving it and they weren't qualified as a kitchen, but it does have a sink and has a countertop on it. So now it's just going to be picking up all those other areas in there. So if I've got a wet bar in the basement, finished off basement, which all receptacles in the basement have to be GFCI anyway, so that's not a good one. Let's say a wet bar in my man cave. Okay, well, if it has a sink, then guess what? There you go. You're gonna have to GFCI protect those receptacles. Probably not a bad thing, but you're gonna have to do it. All right. So we got some comments in here. Let's look at them. Over on LinkedIn, we have Joseph. Thanks for joining us, Joseph. I'm wondering how many ranges will be hardwired now. Well, the most of the ranges we buy have to be cord and plug based on their listing. But, when it comes to this, you're going to see a change, Joseph, that actually even hardwired ovens, ranges, if they're hardwired, are still going to have to be GFCI protected. That's right. We're going to get there. Slowly but surely, we're going to get there. But yes, that ain't going to help you any. That ain't going to save you. I know they're coming at you either way. Eric says over on YouTube, Eric says $120 for the dual function. Really? Jiminy crickets. They have gone up again. Makes sense, wouldn't it? Supply and demand, I reckon. What can't go with the GFCI? What can't go with the AFCI? I'm not sure I understand the question, Jeremy. That's over on YouTube. AFCI works fine with GFCI. GFCI works fine with AFCI. They're two different technologies. AFCI is looking for characteristics of an arc. GFCI is looking for current traveling outside of a toroidal coil. So it's looking to create a magnetic field because of the way the current travels back to the source. And then it activates, has a solid state circuitry. Is that what you say? So again, it's looking for it. Check it out. Dustin on YouTube. Hey, check this out. Eric, wherever you're at, Dustin can get those dual functions for $60. Y'all need to hook up. That way you can buy them in bulk because hey, I used to tell Jay that all the time. It says, if you can find places where they're cheaper, hey, I wonder if anybody ever done this. I wonder if you go on like Home Depot or Lowe's and you look at a Lowe's in a different area than you're at. Is the prices cheaper or does it automatically say no? And then you have it shipped to you because they ship. Can you circumvent the local prices by doing that? I've never done that. I'm wondering if you could do that or not. So like if I was wherever Giovanni is and they're $60, but wherever Eric is, they're $120. If you were to go on the Home Depot app and say, go to wherever Giovanni's at, and then look at them, can you have them shipped anywhere you want, but pay the prices of where Giovanni is? Or is the app too smart for that? Never done it. So you might think about it. I mean, I don't know. Getting costly up there. All right, so let's get back to it. So here, again, what we're looking at is the 2023, folks. And so again, kitchens everywhere. Now, those wet bars, if it's got a sink and it's got provisions for cooking, or food preparation, just a counter, it's fine. Then it's going to have a GFCI protection. Sinks didn't change, so kind of works the same way. Anywhere that you have a sink and there's receptacles installed within 6 feet of the top inside edge of the bowl of the sink, then guess what? You're going to have GFCI. That didn't change, so that's not really a change from the 2020. Let's see what we've got here. What next? All right, boathouses, no change. Bathtubs and shower stalls, no change. Laundry area, no change. This one was big for people in the last cycle because it meant that in that laundry area, it meant that now because we got rid of the 15 and 20 amp threshold in the 2020 code, it meant that now your dryer is going to have to be the receptacle for the dryer. If it's in a laundry area or in a basement, it's going to have to be GFCI protected, right? So that was a huge change then in that. So, all right. So then we have multiple exceptions that we have here. One of the most noteworthy to me is now let's go back real quick and look at 2022 and see what exceptions we have real quick. And I'll answer some of the questions we have over in the comments. I want to go back really quickly and see what else we might have had. Let's see. Hold on here. Let's see here. Let's see. Bear with me here real quick. Here we go. So I'm going to scroll down, and yeah, this is the 2020. And other than the exceptions that are kind of embedded under the different allowances, they're still there. We still have some of the exceptions, but it looks like they've all been moved to the bottom in 2023. Okay, so here's it still. It ends at indoor damp and wet locations, right? And so 11, and so we go look at 2023. It looks like we have the 12. So 7 was added. The areas for sink and permanent provisions was added, but now we have 12 instead of 11. Okay. Now the exceptions are now added underneath it all. Okay. So now we do still have the exception number 2, which was previously to the basements, right? But now it's an exception number 2. So just moved it. And it says a receptacle supplying only a permanent installed premise security system shall not be required to have. Oh, now it says shall not be permitted to omit. What the crap? I'm gonna have to go look at this and zoom in on it because it don't make sense. Maybe I'm just not saying. Let's get rid of let's hide the legislative text. See if it reads a little bit better. All that legislative text can really throw you. All right, here we go. It says exception number 2. A receptacle supplying only a permanently installed premise security system shall be permitted to omit ground fault circuit interrupt protection. Okay, right? So it's not saying anything about omitting, at least here, anything but it allows you to omit the GFCI protection. So the exceptions are still here instead of being underneath, I guess, because you know what? You could have a location where the premise security system is not actually in a basement, but you want to be able to omit GFCI protection on it. I guess that makes sense. So kind of moving it down in the exception makes a whole lot of sense if you still want to do it. So all of the exceptions are still relevant. But notice exception number 4, and I will kind of come down to that one right here. So this exception number 4, which was not, I don't believe, in the 2020 edition. So I'm gonna go look real quick. We're all new to this stuff here. Yeah, there's no really exception that dealt with that. The attachment fitting under 10, which applies for 1 through 3, 5, and 8, and 10, kind of pick and chose what the exception applied to. If we look at the 2023, we see there's still 4 exceptions, and it looks like all of these exceptions apply broadly, to all of 1 through 12. Okay. Guess they're only going to be applicable to certain ones if it's, but it applies to all of them. But look at number 4. Number 4 says factory installed receptacles that are not readily accessible and are mounted internally to bathroom exhaust fans assemblies shall not require GFCI protection unless required by the installation instructions or listing. Hey, this one's neat. Only because how many of you have ever installed the exhaust fans and the fan has a receptacle that you plug into? And I guess somebody plugs something into it. I don't know. I guess you could plug something into it. So at any rate, by the literalness of the rule, it could have required GFCI protection. So at this point, they're saying, look, that receptacle that's factory installed, that's built into that exhaust fan assembly, shall not require GFCI protection unless you install it somewhere that the listing from the manufacturer says if you install it in a damp or wet, that it needs to have GFCI protection. Other than that, yeah, not going to require to have GFCI protection. And you can see where some people would have argued if I had an exhaust fan in the ceiling and I measure 6 feet from the sink as the crow flies, that it might have forced that receptacle to be GFCI protected. That's just one analogy. And it's unnecessary. It's inside the exhaust fan. It's not, So anyway, sometimes we feel like we have to protect ourselves from ourselves. And that's what we've got there. Let's see here. We got some questions here that I'm going to read. I like having all the resets in one place instead of looking all over for the reset button. I'm assuming you mean in the panel. Absolutely. Easier just to go there, do the reset, test it, and you know where everything's at. How many times have we been out on a service call and they call you because of a trip to GFCI and there may be 2 GFCIs installed on a circuit, and the one trips upstream and then the one downstream won't reset, and you're like, what the crap's going on? How many of you have lived through that? And so you got to go hunting down that other GFCI. So yeah, I mean, nothing says you can't do them, right? But it's kind of a waste. Hit the first one and everything after it's downstream is going to be fine. So is a pain in the butt for that. Now, if you do the dual functions where you need AFCI and you need GFCI, then they're all back in the panel, right? So they're all good. Easy, one simple location. All right. So that's really the changes for the dwelling unit. Not a whole lot of significant changes. Just to recap it, we added the area where it might be like a wet bar with you have sink and then food preparation or whatnot. So that's kind of going to pick up those wet bars and other things that would probably already required if the receptacles that were within 6 feet of the sink. But, it picks up those other areas in the dwelling. So, and it kind of moved the exceptions to the end. Makes sense. Not a bad flow. All right, so let's move on now to 210.8b. Let's look at some other than dwelling applications. All right, so I will leave on the legislative changes, and that way we can kind of visually see what might have changed, and we'll go back and forth between the 2020 as we've been doing. If you have any comments, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I'll address them if I can. All right, so in this one, we're talking about other than dwelling units. Let's kind of go look at the 2020 really quickly before we dig into the 2023 proposed changes. And so we're going to look here, and I'm going to jump into it. Bear with me. And let's go right here. All right, so this is what we see in the 2020 edition, other than dwelling units. So this covers everything other than, obviously, dwelling units. Bathrooms, if you have receptacles in there, of course, commercial, industrial, all that kind of stuff, you're not required to have the bathroom circuit for receptacles. But if you do, they got to be GFCI protected, no brainer. Kitchens or areas with sink or permanent provisions for either food preparation or cooking. That kind of changed in 2020. It was just kitchens, but now we're picking up things like break rooms and stuff like that in commercial buildings as well. So that's being picked up. Not a change, not a change. In rooftops. So the first three, bathrooms, kitchen area, rooftops, and there's an exception when it comes to the rooftop receptacle. Okay, where it says receptacles on rooftops shall not be required to be readily accessible other than from the rooftop. So just because you're at the ground level and you have a receptacle up there, it only has to be readily accessible from the rooftop. Okay. People used to argue over that and say, that receptacle up there, there's only a ladder getting up there, and I'm not going up there, so I'm not considering that receptacle readily accessible, yada, yada, yada. Or if it's a rooftop without access, maybe just an access door, and inspectors would fail it, saying the GFCI up there is not readily accessible, things like that, because you had to use a ladder to get to it. Well, it was only to be accessible, readily accessible from the rooftop itself. So you're there, then you're working on it. Okay, not really a change, but just kind of letting you know what happened there. So let's kind of go back to 2023 and see. Okay, bathrooms are still there. Kitchens are there. Number 3, areas with sink and permanent provisions for cooking. Okay, so again, what do we see that's changed here? Let's go back. In the 2020 code, kitchens and areas with sink permanent provisions were all lumped together in one. Now they've been split up. Okay, so you've got kitchens, right? And then you've got areas with a sink or permanent provisions for food. So all we did was break it up. Okay, that's what we did on that. Okay, so it's just kind of splitting it up a little bit. Rooftops looks at the same. So let's go back to 2023. All right, so we see that in 2023, for other than dwelling units, it's kind of split it up. 2 is now kitchens, 3 is areas. Check out number 4, buffet serving areas with permanent provisions for food serving, beverage serving, or cooking. So I'm sure you've all been to one of those buffets where they have the whole thing out there where they'll put in food and platters and all this kind of stuff, and there's usually warmers there, heaters, things like that. So anyway, those receptacles are going to be required to be GFCI protected. So that's new. That wasn't in the 2020, so that's new. Getting those buffet, I don't think it was in the 2020. Let's go back and look. Nope, wasn't in the 2020, so buffet areas now. Be used to it. If you work at there's a Chinese buffet. When I was back as in code supervisor back in Alexandria, Virginia, there was this, up in Alexandria, there's this Chinese buffet that was amazing. Okay, you paid for it later, I'm telling you, but it was an amazing buffet. Well, they would now need GFCI receptacles out there, or if they had receptacles, they'd have to be GFCI protected. Rooftops there now. Doing the same thing that we did with dwelling units, it looks like the exceptions are removed and will be relocated at the bottom, I assume, for all of these. So, okay, so we'll see how that goes. But looks like that's what's taking place. Outdoor receptacles, again, we're talking 125 through 250 volt receptacles. This is a receptacle rule, by the way. Very much tied to receptacles. And we have sinks. Sinks where the receptacle or cord and plug connected fixed or stationary appliances are installed within 6 feet from the top inside edge of the bowl or the sink. Okay, let's look at 2020, see how that changed with it deals with sinks. All right, so we gotta scroll down a little bit in order to try to capture this one here. See, there we go. So let's look and see what we got here. Sinks. All right, so this is 2020. Notice what it says. Item number 5. It says where sinks are installed within 6 feet from the top inside edge of the bowl or the sink. Now they've expanded that. So in the 2023 code, it's not going to be just sinks. It's going to be what? Sinks where receptacles are cord and plug connected fixed or stationary appliances are installed. Okay? So, so sinks where receptacles or cord and plug connected fixed or stationary appliances are installed within 6 feet of the top inside edge are going to have to be GFCI protected. Right? So you could have a fixed piece of appliance that still plugs in to a receptacle. I mean, just to give you that analogy, like a garbage disposer, it's fixed. In-sink waste disposer, it's fixed, but it could be cord and plug connected. That's an example of a cord and plug, but it's fixed, okay? But saying fixed and stationary makes it clear that it's intended to stay there, right? Even though it might be cord and plug connected, right? So expansion there a little bit. Now, all of these exceptions have probably been relocated and revamped and moved to the end. We'll look at it. But now you're kind of seeing what's expanding when it comes to GFCIs. Let's go down a little bit more. Okay. Let's see here. So we've got indoor damp and wet locations, not a change. And your comments over in the comments, I will get to y'all in a second. Let's see here. Locker rooms with associated shower facilities, not a change. Garages, accessory buildings, service bays, and similar areas other than vehicle exhibition halls and showrooms, not really a change. Crawl spaces at or below grade level, not a change. Applies the same for dwelling unit as you would have here for other than dwelling unit, not a change. Okay, so the next one is 12, and this is a peculiar one to me that the code panel would go this direction. This is okay. But here, there seems to be that there's less of a hazard in other than dwellings than it is in dwellings when it comes to finished versus unfinished basements. If the argument was, and this is just my opinion, if the argument was that the hazard exists the same for a finished or an unfinished basement, then why would it be so critical for us to make sure that we say that unfinished basements in a other than dwelling, right, are going to be going to require GFCI protections, but only the unfinished, not any that's finished off? Wasn't the hazard still be the same? Whether if you believe that the dwelling unit is unsafe, whether it's finished or unfinished, wouldn't it be the same for other than dwelling? It's still a basement, right? Whether it's finished. So here, I actually submitted something to this and they just totally ignored it. So I don't know. But just remember, other than dwellings, that you only require GFCI protection on unfinished areas of basements for other than dwellings. All right. Let's look at some of the questions here. Remember, you can submit your questions, your opinions, your thoughts, your comments. You like it, you hate it, you don't agree with it. Let me hear it. Let's see here. And I can't, what is that? Lucianoreros, I'm sorry, says, I came in late. Will the new exams be based on the 2023 code book? Well, the 2023 is not even out yet. We're looking at proposed code changes so that you can be to speed. And for those that are interested in seeing what's coming down the pike and how it's going to impact you business-wise and how you make a decision. As far as your states, they still have to adopt it. So your testing will be whatever your state's adopted right now. Texas, once the 2023 comes out, it'll be 4 months, and then all of a sudden they'll be on the 2023, and the testing will change pretty rapidly. But everywhere else, 2023 is not even out yet. So all this is to make you aware of changes. Okay, Luciano Reyes. Sorry, I am terrible with names, brother. So forgive me. So let's see. Yep, and Giovanni's let you know it's not in yet. We're taking a sneak peek at the changes, and this is an ongoing series where we're going to be looking at changes. All right, next one to look at is 13. This is new. Aquariums. So any receptacle, 125 volt through 250 volt, that are installed for aquariums or in aquariums, I guess for use by aquariums, bait wells, or similar open aquatic vessels or containers. I'm thinking like when you go to the fish pet store, the fish aquariums, or the receptacles that plug into those, that the lighting or the circulating pumps or whatever, auctionate or whatever it is. I never was much of a fish guy. Last fish I had, they died, so I've stayed away from fish. I have a much better survival rate with dogs and cats than I do with fish. But I'm also thinking, you know, I like to fish a lot. We go to these stores with bait wells, so we get our shad and stuff like that. So any of those receptacles are going to have to be GFCI protected now as well. Tanks and bowls where receptacles are installed within. Okay, so there is a limitation here. So it's receptacles for all of those things that are installed within 6 feet of the top inside edge or rim, or from the conductive support framing of the vessel or container. So I guess one of the things is if you go to a pet store and they have the frames that the aquariums sit in, and if they're metal frames, then the measurement also could be to the frame, all right? But usually these are against the wall, so it's probably all going to be within a distance within 6 feet of the actual receptacle. So just going to mean more GFCI protection. All right. So there you go. So that's new. That's new for 2023. Of course, then we have laundry area. And remember, we're talking other than dwelling. So this is laundry area, commercial laundries, maybe a multifamily building that has a laundry facility that's accessible to all the tenants. Then you're going to have it. And guess what? That means GFCI protection on the dryers and the washing machines, right? And to be honest with you, all of the receptacles in the laundry area are going to have to be GFCI protected. Wow. Okay. And that's not new. That was also required in 2020. So, and then of course we have 15, which is bathtubs and shower stalls where receptacles are located within 6 feet of the outside edge of the bathtub or shower stall. Now let's go back real quick, and we had 15 items here. We know a couple were added. Let's go back and look at 2020 just so we can get context to this. So here we are at the 2020, so you can kind of get a visualization of the change. We have 12. So we have added 3 more to the list, okay? Three more to the list for the 2023 edition of the NEC. So which ones did we add? Just for summary. Okay, we added the aquarium. We added what? Let's see here. Let me see if I can get back to that one here. So we added the aquarium. We added the buffet, right? And then we split up the kitchens and areas with sinks and permanent provisions for food preparation. So we kind of split it up a little bit. So that one's added up, all right? So again, just kind of breaking things up a little bit to kind of fit everything in there, all right? So those are our changes there. Now let's look at these exceptions. All right, so the same exceptions are kind of here. Let's look at it. Exception number 1 is receptacles that are not readily accessible and are supplied by a branch circuit dedicated to electric snow melting, de-icing, and pipeline and vessel heating. That's the same. That's there. That didn't change. Number 2 says receptacles on rooftops. Okay, so you see where that one was? Before, it was underneath, I think, the items above. Moved to the bottom. Makes sense. Makes sense. Exception number 3. This one has to do with receptacles. In receptacles or cord and plug connected fixed or stationary appliances installed within 6 feet from the top inside edge of the bowl or sink shall not be required to be GFCI protected in industrial establishments only. And then, of course, then it gives you some conditions for that. That was there as well, but they just, brought it back. So generally, everywhere else, yes. Okay, you'd have to have GFCI protection. But if you're dealing with a stationary or fixed location for appliances and it's an industrial establishment, then we'll give you an exception. Always exception. Number 4, there's another one for the receptacles or cord and plug connected fixed or stationary appliances installed within 6 feet from the top inside edge of the bowl of a sink shall not be required to be GFCI protected. For industrial laboratories where the receptacles are used to supply equipment if removal of power would induce a greater hazard. So if you're in a like a lab, okay? And it's an industrial laboratory, and you've got receptacles there, and you've got certain things plugged into that where you create a greater risk if it were to shut off or trip off. Then we don't want to have a greater risk. So there you get to say, okay, it's industrial laboratory, whatever they're working on, maybe certain chemicals, maybe certain processes. You can ignore GFCI under that exception. Of course, you have number 5, which receptacles located in patient bed locations of category 2 or category 1. These are the ones that are usually within that patient care space, usually that patient bed location, and you have life critical things, okay, plugged into those receptacles. The last thing we want is for a GFCI to trip off while somebody's got their life monitor or whatever, their artificial lung or something plugged into that thing. That should make sense, right? Not a new change, it's just moved into the format down here. And of course, exception number 6 is also talking about those receptacles that are built into that mating system, where it's not really designed for you to plug any regular receptacle in it. They're specifically designed as an attachment fitting. And this came into code a couple cycles ago, and they lobbied hard for these things. So if anybody ever tells you that lobbying doesn't get things in the code sometimes, they lobbied hard for those things, and it got into the code, okay? And I'll remind folks out there who are watching, they are patented, and only one company can make it. So don't be telling me that can't happen, because it happened with those. Only one company has the licensed patent to it. So, and there's one guy out there who used to work for a well-known safety group who fought very hard for them. I'm just going to say. It's in there. So, you know who you are. All right, so those are the changes. Really not any changes to the exception, just a reformat. That's all. Just reformat it, okay? Let's move on. All right, so the next change that we've got to dig into is, okay, was there any change to the crawl space lighting outlets? All right, so we got to look and see if there's any change to that. And so let's kind of go look at 2020 and see what we got. Remember, if you got any comments on these changes, let me know in the chat. I'm more than happy to reread them and talk about them. All right, so it looks like 210.8c, there is no change. GFCI, the GFCI for crawl space lighting outlets, absolutely. So, hey, this is the first start now of requirements that aren't receptacle driven. It's just GFCI driven. So 210.8a and b are receptacle driven. Now we're moving into things that are not receptacle driven. Okay. And so in this case, I don't think there was a change. So let's look at 2023. Hey, if y'all like the new format and the screen changes and the backdrop and everything, the green, the purple, why did I say green? The purple, let me know. I love hearing if you like the way it looks. If you don't, let me know. I'll change it. All right. So here it looks like no change. 2023, no change at all. All right. Here's where we're going to start getting some impacts of some significant changes. Let's look at 210.8d. Now, what did 2020 look like first? This is talking about specific appliances. All right, so let's go to 2020 and see what, okay, check this out. So in 2020, it really was a placeholder to send you to 422, right? And in 422.5, we had a list of different appliances that had to have GFCI protection. Okay, now you had your other receptacle locations that if you had an appliance that plugged into it, that was 210.8a or b, so that was already in place. But here you had some additional requirements for GFCI protection, and it sent you to 422.5. Okay, well, what's the change for 2023? Well, the code panels, and I can tell you, kicking and screaming, code panel 17 probably didn't want to give up that. Some people didn't. They want to give it up and let it go over and be in code making panel 2's hands. We still probably retain purview over some of that, but in appliances we do. But total change Total change for 2023. So let's look at it. And some people love this change. So here's what we got. Now, check this out. Here's where it's going to make people really start to say, okay, this is where I expect a bunch of comments, okay? So you comment warriors, let me know your thoughts. So here's what we've got. So here's 2023. It says GFCI protection shall be provided for the branch circuit or outlet. And I'm going to tell you, it's not going to be so easy for the outlet, right? Have y'all ever seen a GFCI clothes dryer outlet? Have you ever seen a GFCI electric range outlet or a device? Have you seen a device that goes in the outlet for electric range? Have you ever seen one? Let me know if you've ever seen a GFCI receptacle at 50 amps, at 40 amps, even at 30 amps, a receptacle. Let me know. Let me know in the comments. All right, so check this out. So here's what it says. GFCI protection shall be provided for the branch circuit or outlet supplying the following appliances rated 150 volts or less to ground. And remember, that means a 240 volt appliance. One leg to ground is going to be 120. So it's obviously 150 volts or less. So yes, it's going to apply to 120, 240 volt appliances, things like that. Okay. So it says, GFCI protection shall be provided for the branch circuit and outlet supplying the following appliances rated 150 volts or less to ground, and means this and that, not this or that. It has to apply to both and 60 amperes or less, single or three-phase. So what does that mean? Automotive vacuum machines, whether they're accessible to the public or the private, doesn't matter. Drinking water coolers and bottle fill stations, GFCI protection. High pressure spray machine, washing machines, whether accessible to public or private, doesn't matter. Tire inflation machines, whether they're the ones that are in the building used for commercial purposes, or even the ones that are out there that the consumers can come right up to and use. GFCI protection. Sump pumps. What do you think? How many people have said to me before, Paul, there's no way you should be putting a sump pump on a GFCI in your basement? Now remember, this one right here, 210.8D, is not residential or commercial specific. It applies to everything. So yes, your sump pump in your basement is going to require GFCI protection. Now, this isn't a change. This was required in 2020, but I still have people that struggle with that. They go like, well, hey, Paul, wasn't there a rule where I could run a simplex receptacle? Shout out to Mr. Simmons, or Sims, James for that. A single receptacle on a single yoke. Michael will know what I'm talking about. And put that in the basement and you plug in your sump pump. Was that allowed to be an exception where it doesn't have to be GFCI protected? It's still required to be GFCI protected. So I guess, to be honest with you, we're worried less about the flooding of the basement, right? Because you can drain that water out. I lived in a house at the basement flood. It was a dry location, mind you, but the basement flood every time we had a major rain. Okay. So at the end of the day, okay. All right. So hold on. I get to ban some people real quick. There we go. All right. So at the end of the day, GFCI protected. GFCI protected. It's a requirement. All right. Let's keep going. Now, dishwashers. This isn't new. Years ago, it only applied to dwelling unit dishwashers, but then it got changed. And when it got moved to 422, it applied broadly to all dishwashers because you know what? We have to protect them from themselves. They have what is a known end-of-life issue. So rather than put the GFCI in the product, which they have an option to do, we are going to do out of the greatness of our hearts, we're going to provide GFCI protection. Do you detect any sarcasm in that? All right, so dishwashers, residential, commercial, doesn't matter, GFCI protection. Now remember, this isn't receptacle driven right here. This is even hardwired, okay? You have the option of providing it at the breaker, or if they made a receptacle that goes in an outlet, you can do it there. Now, something you got to keep in mind. Even if they did make it as a receptacle option, if you put it behind one of these appliances, would it be readily accessible? Probably not. So what is that really going to mean? Yes, it means the breaker guys are going to get the majority of the lion's share of the business for this. I'm just saying. All right? I'm just saying. Of course, you could put the receptacle to the side, maybe, or whatever. Yeah, there's ways around it, but we know who's going to make the most out of that one. All right. So next one would be number 8. Okay, here you go. Ready? Mind blown? I don't have anything for mind being blown.
I do have this, which can make me sound more dramatic when I talk about this one.
We're talking about electric ranges. You heard it, folks. So I've had people say, well, the new kitchen receptacle rule in 210.8a, there's going to be a lot more hardwired ranges. Okay? Right? Well, gotcha. Absolutely. You're going to have to provide GFCI protection now to electric ranges. I don't know. Did we have did people die? I didn't read anything. I didn't get the memo that we had all these people dying from ranges. No, couldn't, Michael. Schwartzy. No way it's not. There's no money motivation there. Of course not. I had a button for that, Michael, but I am not going to push that button. Hell no. There's no money motivation there. Anyway, it's all about lives. It's all about protecting lives. I'm just saying. I'm not giving an opinion. I'm just saying. All right, anyway. So electric ranges. Check out the next one. Ready?
Wall-mounted ovens.
Absolutely. So in your kitchens now, wall-mounted ovens are going to have to be GFCI protected. And again, remember, we're talking about not just receptacles here. This is broad. This is hardwired, right? This is 210.8d is not about receptacles here. So, but you could use a receptacle as the option, but how would you do that with a wall-mounted oven? You wouldn't. It wouldn't be readily accessible. So, it's going to be the breaker. The next one, guess what? Do they make 2-pole GFCI breakers? Absolutely. Absolutely they do. Remember hot tubs, spas and hot tubs, they get 2-pole GFCI breakers all the time. Yeah, they're out there. They make them. Pricey. I had Jay or somebody told me that it's so hard to get equipment today, right now, that they said that it was cheaper to actually buy the entire, like a hot tub or spa enclosure just to steal the breaker out of it than it is to buy the individual breaker by itself. I don't know that to be true. I believe if Jay says it, it's true. Or maybe it just was an analogy he might have given. But there are occasions where, for example, I can buy a panel with the main breaker in it, and they're cheaper than the main lug only, just because of the demand and the supply and how many you may. I don't know that to be total, but dude, it's getting crazy out there. Supply and demand, I reckon. I don't know. But can you imagine now, you're going to have to do GFCI for your wall-mounted ovens. Now, again, I'm not a here nor there. I'm just saying you do have to be aware of it. It's obviously coming. Okay. So let's see. The next, I'm not sure what you mean, Kevin. I didn't know that I ever left YouTube. If it dropped out, I'm not aware of it. I'll go check it. But last I checked, I was there, so I'm not 100% sure, brother. So I did not think that I dropped out of it at YouTube. So 100% sure, brother. So no, mine shows I'm still there. So I don't know. All right, so where was I? I don't know. I forgot. Yeah, Kevin, lost my train of thought. I lost what I was thinking about. Somebody tell me what my train of thought was. I'm also, for folks that don't know, I have high cholesterol, so I'm on this statin drug. And one of the side effects, one of those side effects was memory fog. So you have to forgive me. Was warned of that when the doctor said you're going to start taking this stuff for cholesterol, that it could affect your memory. So again, that's my excuse. I'm going to go with it when I forget something in the code. Okay. Now I've got a good excuse. All right. Okay. Anyway, so supply chains. So yeah, this is going to be difficult for people. So now let's look at item number 10. Check this out. Counter-mounted cooking units, cooktops, GFCI protection. Dude, everything in your panel at this point is going to be GFCI protected, right? So again, so yeah, so here is an issue where, what am I going to do with it? I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not sure what you mean, Michael. The address doesn't help either. Help me out with that real quick. Let me help me out with what your comment is. So counter-mounted cooking units. All right, next one, clothes dryers. Well, we already covered that one, right? If the clothes dryer was in the laundry area, and usually it's going to be cord and plug connected. And I've never seen a hardwired clothes dryer. Maybe they're out there for laundromat applications. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. Got to be GFCI protected specifically now. Even if it's not located in a laundry area, or even if it's not located in a basement where all the receptacles are required to be GFCI protected. So now it's just flat out going to be required GFCI protection. What's up, Estrada? Welcome. Johnny, welcome. Kevin, welcome to the stream. Anybody I missed, welcome. All right. The next one we have is actually, Kevin, I live streamed yesterday. Did you miss that one? I live streamed yesterday. I can't remember what I streamed about. Again, my memory issues again. There you go. Lost my memory. But I did live stream. I just don't do as many videos, at least public ones anymore. So I do have a derating demystified new revamped version coming out. Yeah, I have ADHD. Yeah, I do have that. You nailed that one, Michael. I do. I'm honest about it. Let's see here. Dude, I am so far from perfect. All right, anyway, so the next one is microwave ovens. Microwaves. So in a kitchen, in 210.8a, in the kitchen, since all receptacles are going to have to be GFCI protected now, not just the ones that serve the counter, but all of them, if your microwave was a cord and plug, then it would have been picked up in 210.8a for the 2023 edition, right? Well, people said, well, what if I just hardwire that mamma jamma? If you can hardwire it. I don't ever remember hardwiring a microwave oven. But if you did, still at this point, it's going to have to be GFCI protected. So there you go. That's the list. Now, where did this change from 2020? Everything sent you to 422.5, right? That's where it sent you. Well, here now the list has been moved here. And I'll remind you that this applies to what? All of these that are 150 volts or less to ground and 60 amperes or less. Okay? Now, you get over 60 amperes, not going to invoke this requirement. Okay? Now, Estrada, the question is, it depends. So if you're in a kitchen and you have the requirement for AFCIs and the requirement for GFCI, then you're going to do it. Now, currently, the AFCI is not going to apply to things like ranges, ovens, and all that kind of stuff. But anywhere that you would have a GFCI requirement and an AFCI requirement together, then you could do that with the dual function device if you wanted, or you could use individual devices. You could use an AFCI combination in the panel and a GFCI device, receptacle style device on the countertop, and they work perfectly together, or other receptacles in the kitchen, whatever. You can do both technologies together, or if you want, because yes, those receptacles that going around your kitchen, they're going to need AFCI protection and GFCI protection in the 2023 code, right? So dual function is the easy way to go. Simple. Easy way to go, and that's what Jay likes to do for all of his stuff too. So again, it's going to make you have to think about it. All right, let's go look at the 2020 again, and let's keep on moving through. And the next one we want to look at is after D, we had 210.8E. This is equipment requiring servicing, and that made a reference to 210.63. That was the receptacle that's within 25 feet of the outdoor air conditioning unit, things like that. Receptacles that were required for around service equipment other than dwellings, because usually there's an exception for that, but like service equipment in commercial locations and all that kind of stuff, those receptacles would have to be GFCI protected. Shouldn't be a change. Let's see what we've got in 2023 for E. Okay, no change. That's what it looks like. No change for that one. All right, so now let's look at F. Okay. All right. So here's the controversial one. Here's one that people said, well, wait a minute. What the heck's going on with this one? I thought there was some memo going around that they were going to get rid of it. Because remember, when this says outdoor outlets, this is not talking about receptacles, right? That's covered in outdoors in 210.8A for dwellings and whatever for 210.8B for other than dwellings. That's already covered. We're talking outdoor outlets. And outlet, if you look at the definition of it, it's a point in a system where we take power from. Okay? You can argue the semantics of an outdoor air conditioning unit that the disconnecting switch or the disconnect is not an outlet, it's a disconnect. Okay. But the outlet, the point where we take power from, could be right at the point that it connects to the HVAC unit. The point is, somewhere on that branch circuit, we got an outlet because we're pulling power from the system. So we can argue the semantics of it. The point is, this is supposed to apply to all of even junction boxes outside that we take power from to supply equipment, right? And that's what this is. So don't think outlets mean receptacles, because they're just devices. They go inside of an outlet box, right? I'm sure you all knew that, but wanted to make it clear. There's a lot of people that argue the semantics on this one, but it's clear what they were trying to drive at. So let's look at here. So this is the change, but let's look at what it said in 2020 so you can see how dramatic this changed. So this is 2023. We're almost done for today's episode in 210.8, so bear with me. So let's look here. And here's what it said, okay, for 210.8. All right, F. It said all outdoor outlets for dwellings, other than those covered in 210.8A3, exception 2.3, that are supplied by single phase branch circuits rated 150 volts to ground or less, 50 amperes or less, shall have ground fault circuit interrupter protection for personnel. This requirement shall become effective on January 1st, 2023 for mini split. Okay, so see this language that's addressing the mini split. It's giving them time to make the change, okay? That was what we had as an amendment to 2020's code, to try to give them time to solve this mini split issue, right? And that first started in Texas. And the real argument here was, well, what happens if these mini splits trip off the GFCI and it's 105 degrees outside? Homeowners ain't gonna know how to reset all this and get it back going. You're gonna have more people that die from heat stroke than the risk they're gonna have of a piece of equipment like that shocking them. You with me? So they really got behind this, and of course, then they got it changed and had it amended into the code, and that's what we see here. How did this change? for the 2023 to address this. Okay. And of course, there's an informational note here that's talking about the power conversion equipment used and the different components in HVAC system is what caused the problems with it and all that kind of stuff. So what does it say for 2020? How do we get beyond this? How do we move forward? Let's see. Well, here's what we've got for 2023. Let's see if we clear this up. It says for dwellings, again, only applies to dwellings. Okay, so F only applies to dwellings, folks. Relax. It says all outdoor outlets other than those covered in 210.8a, exception number 1. Again, remember it just got removed to the bottom of that one. Including outlets installed in the following locations. Okay, and supplied by single-phase branch circuit rated 150 volts or less to ground. So you see how they fixed that. It was kind of written a little backwards in the previous edition. It was 150 volts to ground or less, and now it's 150 volts or less to ground. And 50 amperes or less, so we've got our thresholds, shall be provided with GFCI protection. Okay? Now, you'll notice something in here. It doesn't say 150 volts or less to ground and 50 amperes or less. So it's either 150 volts or less to ground, or it's 50 amps or less, okay, shall be provided with GFCI protection. Okay, could be this one or that one without putting the or in there. There was no and in here, okay? So what is number 1? Garages that have floors located at or below grade level. Okay, so these are some of the locations, okay, that have to have it. Accessory buildings, okay. You see they got rid of all outdoor outlets for dwellings other than those covered, so that was the exception. Got rid of that one. And then they've got boat houses, okay. So it's important that we look at this change because it says at the beginning, for dwellings, all outdoor outlets all outdoor outlets other than those covered in 210.8a, exception 1, including outlets in these locations. So it covers what? All of the stuff in 210.8a covers that for dwellings that are outdoors. Still applies. But also these specific locations as well are going to apply. Okay? And then it says if equipment supplied by an outlet covered under this requirement of this section is replaced, the outlet shall be supplied with GFCI protection. Okay, that's a rule that's kind of like a retroactive rule. So if you're doing something and you're replacing a piece of equipment and you're going to be replacing something, and guess what? It's going to have the protection. All right, here we got some more blockers. Here we got a block. Okay. All right. So if the equipment supplied by that outlet under the requirements of this section is replaced. So if it's replaced, the equipment's replaced, go and invoke it. Let me give an example how this might take place. If I have an air conditioning unit outside, you can argue where the outlet is, but if I have a receptacle outside and I replace the air conditioning unit, upgrade it, new one, whatever, replaced, period. Then guess what? When I do that, then it's going to have to be GFCI protected. So it's a retroactive thing that's going to be taking place here. Okay? Exception. GFCI protection shall not be required for lighting outlets other than those covered in 210.8c. Okay? And that's example of that was the crawl space, right? And the crawl space. So again, we're not talking about lighting outlets that are outside your door, okay, that illuminate your entry into your dwelling or into your building. Not talking about that, okay? We're talking about outlets outside where you might put a box and take power from it to supply something outside. You with me? So, you know what? All in all, not that bad of changes. Let's see here. I don't think the chat's working still. I'll go back and look. Yeah, I don't think that it's working, so we're not going to be able to see all of your chats that are on the screen. I'll get that fixed in a later edition, so that way you can look at all the chats collectively in one location. So let me kind of go back to just me and sitting here at the 2020 real quick. And I'll just look at, well, let's go to the 2023. All right, so there you go. There's our changes for that. And, oh, real quick, do you want to see what 422 looks like now since we moved all that stuff back to D? Let's see if I can't show you what that looks like now. Hold on here. Let me see if I can go to that real quick. Bear with me. I will give it a look-see. Let's see here. 422. Okay. All right. Let's see here. All right. So, see if I can get y'all there real quick. Hold on, bear with me. All right, that's it. So, what's probably happening is that you see all these public comments and all this stuff that's being changed. It either hasn't gone through the final process yet and moved, because you see that this list only has 7 items. And so this may stay, but I think it's probably going to be changed. I can't remember what we did with it, but you see that most of all of this got moved over to 210.8D, and then they added some additional ones over there, that type of thing. But again, so this is just kind of what it is. Now, the location type is giving you how you can do it, whether it's at the source, whether it's a receptacle, whether it's integrated into the equipment, all that kind of stuff. That's what we got going on for that. All right. So the next thing that we're going to look at, not on this series, but we're going to go into the next live stream. We're probably going to look at AFCI changes. I'm sure that one's going to be a much shorter one, because I don't believe there is a lot of AFCI changes. I don't believe there was hardly any. So I will look at that really quickly to see if I need to be more than one episode for that. Let's see here. Let's go to AFCIs. Not much. Again, we do see how it's going to be broken down now into this format: dormitories, other occupancies, and some of the things that have been removed and put together and modified. And maybe I'll even explain some of these rules, right? That type of thing. So to make sure that they make sense. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, that'll be our next episode. Hopefully you'll join me on that. Hopefully I haven't bored you too bad. But now you should have a better understanding of how it's going to come and how it's going to lay out for the 2023. So let's see if we got any additional questions in here. Let's see, some additional questions we have. John says, so can you put a regular plug in the kitchen and GFCI and AFCI breaker? Absolutely, John. So I can put a regular 20 amp, or I can even, for the countertop, let's say I can even put a 15 amp because the code allows for that, duplex receptacle, and be on the 20 amp circuit. I'm good to go. And put the AFCI, GFCI dual function in the panel. Good to go. It's protected. Everything downstream is protected. What's up, Frank? Thanks for joining me. Estrada says GFI for AC with no space in the panel. Well, you got to remember something, Estrada. There's probably going to have a 2-pole breaker anyway that's going to the existing air conditioning unit. So you're probably just going to be swapping that out with a GFCI 2-pole. So you'd be space for space. The only downside for that is, and I think what you're alluding to, is what do I do if I'm doing a service call and I'm replacing an air conditioning unit and inspector rolls up and does say that from the disconnect down to the actual access port on the air conditioning unit, that is the outlet point. So I need to change this to GFCI protection. And the panel is old, or the panel is existing. How in the world would you comply to this? I think the only way that you could probably, and you know what? I'm sure as heck that jurisdictions will modify this. Because the NEC is not a catch-all, right? Well, I say that wrong. The NEC is way broad. obviously I joke about people amending the NEC, but every jurisdiction will tackle it differently. And we do have amendments and changes. The only way that I could achieve this is, one, we know that there's probably, a receptacle device is out of the question. That's not going to happen. So I can't put it back in the panel. So what I might have to do is put a panel there instead of the disconnect. And maybe the disconnect is just a knife switch or something like that, because you have protection up at the panel. It's just serving as a disconnect. So it's still a branch circuit. It's not a feeder, because if you have a circuit to a disconnect that actually has overcurrent protection in it, then that's a feeder to it, and then it's branch circuit to the unit. Then there I could probably change it and put a GFCI there. But if it's just a disconnect, like a pull-out disconnect, and I can't do it back at the panel because it's an old, antiquated panel, but now I've got an inspector forcing me to put GFCI here, the only choice I've got is to replace that pull-out disconnect and now change it. But then I'm screwed as well, right? Because now chances are I have to make sure that I have 4 conductors coming out there, right? So, you're going to have to challenge. It's going to be a challenge. But you might be able to take that disconnect and turn it into a remote distribution panel, making sure that you have obviously your 4 conductors running to it, yada, yada, yada. And then you can put the breakers in there, and then you could install a modern GFCI that would fit. Other than that, I really don't know how you would achieve it. I'm sure a lot of you are working with older panels, and you're upgrading air conditioning systems all the time. They're upgrading things. It's going to be a challenge for you. It obviously is, but they have mandated it, and they want it to be kind of a retroactive thing. So it is going to be what it is. Okay. So anyway, that's about all I had for this live stream. Hopefully you got something out of this, that it wasn't a pure waste of my time. I am sure, like always, there's people who want to put nasty comments down in the comments of the video. If you feel like you want to be that nasty of a person, just go ahead. I don't really care anymore. But if you did appreciate it, do me a favor, give a thumbs up, and like and share, and let other people know, and subscribe, because I will be doing more analyses. Is that a word? Analysis of change when it comes to the 2023. So, Johnny, what brought on these changes? The code development process brought on these changes. So this would be a great time, since I won't do it in the other ones because we'll kind of get an idea. But let me go on and explain how the code development process works for those that aren't familiar. Because there are a lot of people that say that the manufacturers are the ones that are doing all this. Let me set the record straight on that real quick. And if y'all have any other questions, feel free to post them. I'm more than happy to answer them. So in the code development process, every 3 years, we have a cycle that starts about 2 years from the publish date of the edition. So for example, the 2026 will start. You'll start getting things in the 2024, and people will start submitting. So it'll become open for you to say, you know what, I disagree with something in the code. I want to submit something to the code panel to get it changed. Well, you put it together, and it's free. You can go to nfpa.org and get a free account and use something called TerraView, and you can submit those changes. And you can see what it looks like in real time. The problem is you have to be able to substantiate your changes. If you just don't like something in the code, or you just say that's just the manufacturers are trying to, that's not going to get it removed from the code. I'm just giving you a heads up. That's not going to remove it from the code. In fact, it's just going to be, here's what they're going to do to that change. You ready? It's not going to make it anywhere. You have to justify why you think something should change. And if it's substantiated, the code panel will listen to it. And so then what happens is Everybody submits it, not just members on the panel. That's a fallacy. Everybody in the electrical community, whether it's the electricians, engineers, inspectors, anybody that has an interest, safety professionals, third-party NRTL members, anybody can submit a proposed change. It's open to everybody. That's the beautiful thing about the system. It's open. Okay. Now, so you submit it. It gets compiled by NFPA. I also remind you that NFPA does not write the NEC. Other people sometimes don't know that. NFPA has no place in writing the NEC at all. They can write handbooks and give interpretations if they want, informal interpretations, which is just their opinion. And they have great opinions in a lot of cases, but they're no different than anybody else's opinion, whether it's my opinion, Mike Holt's opinion, Ryan Jackson's opinion. They're all equally worth their weight of whatever that is worth. So they get submitted, they get tabulated together, and then it comes to the code panel. We all sit down on the code panel. And how do you get on a code panel, by the way? You have to be a member of an association like Copper Development, Aluminum Association, IEEE, IAEI, IEC, NECA, IBEW, all of these different inspection groups, associations. If you're a member, and there's a lot of people that are fighting for the prestige to be on these panels. So just because you join, don't think you're going to get a seat on the code panel. But if you're lucky enough to get a seat, then you get to sit at the table. And what we do is we will look at all of these public inputs, okay, that come in, and we'll look at it. And collectively, we'll all research it before it's time. And we'll develop our positions on it, what we think is merited about it, what's not right about it, whether it's worthless. And then we discuss it during the meetings. And that's when, okay, now listen to me. I want you folks to listen. This is when manufacturers can have influence. And nobody's hiding this, because a lot of times a manufacturer has expertise in one certain area that's being submitted. And so they will argue for something. They will give their opinion on something. And you got to remember, in a code panel, not everybody in the code panel are experts on everything. You know what I'm saying? So there are 15, 20, or 30 people on a code panel, depending on the panel. Some people, there only might be 10 people that are experts on one given thing. I'm going to give you an example. Code panel 6, when it comes to wire and cable. There's only 3 or 4 wiring manufacturers on there. That's it. And they're experts at wire and cable. That's it. They may not be experts at other things. That's why you have a balance, right? There's other people in there. So let me get back to what happens at a code panel. So if a manufacturer, let's talk about the GFCIs. Let's use them. Let's pick on them. If the manufacturers that sit on the committee have a knowledge of GFCIs, and now somebody submitted, and they could have submitted it. Yes, just like everybody else, they have a right. They submit a code change to introduce expansion of GFCIs. When we're sitting in a room, they get the opportunity to talk like anybody else. You can come to these meetings. They're open. They're public, by the way. You can request to speak on behalf of your public input. And if you come and you argue passionately about your product, or you argue passionately about your public input, or you argue passionately about something you think needs to be changed, then you can sway the panel. Because not everybody in there is an expert on everything. It's just impossible. You will never get an expert who's an expert on everything. So, if you convince me, and I might not be a GFCI guy, but if you start saying stuff like people are going to die, people are getting shocked, we have data. Now, I'm the kind of analytical guy that will say, show me the bodies. But I'm not on that panel, so I'm not going to do that. But I want to see data. Before I put a GFCI on a range or a cooktop or an oven, you're going to have to show me some data. But usually what happens is they convince everybody, hey, GFCIs have been around since the 60s. We know they save lives. Electricity kills. So what's the difference between a 15 amp, a 20 amp, a 30 amp, a 40 amp, a 50 amp, a 60 amp? It needs to be GFCI protected. So usually that's the kind of thing that gets presented. I'm just saying, I'm being real here. And everybody on the panel has to buy into it. So does the manufacturers have more control over a panel? No, they don't. Do they have influence? Well, that's the same for everybody. Okay? They have some influence. For example, Code Panel 17, swimming pools. There's a guy that sits on there that has intimate knowledge of the swimming pool industry. When he talks, do you think people on there that don't have the same level of knowledge, do you think they don't listen to what he has to say? And if you can convince them, guess what? You'll get their vote. It's so much better than the ICC system. I'm telling you, don't get me started. But again, it's not controlled by any one manufacturer. But they still have to convince people on the committee to go along with it. You cannot sway a vote with just 3 or 4 manufacturers on a committee. It's impossible. They have to convince other people that it's warranted. This is why I love Code Panel 5, because there's so many individual thinkers on that we're arguing all the time the semantics of grounding and bonding and all this. I love Code Panel 5, and I love those individuals. Some of the smartest folks in the world. Not that the other code panels aren't, they are, but Code Panel 5, just smart cats. I'm just, just they are. And we got a great chair. Scott, who's our chair, is very intelligent guy who really runs the meeting well. So anyway, I digress. Michael will say my ADHD will get kicked up. So that's what happens. So you submit it, and if we like it and we agree with it, we can massage it. In other words, we don't like your language. It's not technically accurate, the language, but we like what you're saying. Then we will accept it. And then we put it out there, what's called a first draft. And you folks, the public, you get to read it. So don't say that you don't get to see it, because you do get to see it, right? You get to actually see it and understand what it's all about, okay? So if you don't like it, guess what? Guess what you get to do? You get to submit what's called a public comment. So look, for anybody out there that doesn't like what's in the NEC, you can change it. You can be a part of it. In fact, if you see something you don't like coming down the pike, now right now, what I've showed you today, it's too late. You missed the boat. Its ship's already sailed. But if you see something that you don't like, then you can submit a public comment, and it might not make it through that stage. So you submit your public comment. You can't introduce anything new. It can only be based on what was put in the first draft. And you look at it. And another misconception is code panel members cannot just willy-nilly start introducing crap at any stage. It's really difficult to do that. So we don't just sit and do that. So anyway, so once you read that first draft, you don't like something. This is all public. And maybe I'll do a video one day on how to do this so you can get better educated and so you can submit things. Then it comes to the table of members again. And we look at it again. And we look at your public comments to what the first draft was done. And we go, hey, this guy makes sense. Or this girl makes sense. We didn't think of it that way. We need to tweak this thing because this person made sense. And so then we work on it collectively. And then we put it out as called a second draft. And guess what? That gets circulated to you again for you to read it. And if you look at it and go, dude, y'all messed up. Y'all did not capture what I was trying to say. Or you believe that we did something that didn't capture somebody else's public comment. You have another chance. It's called the NITMAMS. It's a notice of intent to make a motion. So you can come back a third time and get a change. So look, you have so many steps in there. There's something in this NEC that you don't agree with and you can substantiate it. So why did these GFCI changes get in there? Because they substantiated it. They presented it to the committee. The people in the committee agreed on it and said that makes sense. Trust me. The IBEW guys do not care what the manufacturers of GFCIs have to say. I've seen them argue. But if it's about safety and they can justify their position in a meeting that is open to anybody to come to, right? Then they're going to vote for it. And that is obviously what took place. Whether you agree with it or disagree, somebody had to substantiate it. Somebody had to argue for it. And they had to convince everybody else on the committee to go along with it. Trust me, there's no collusion going on in these committees. All right? Everybody's an independent thinker, but you have to convince them. And if you're an expert and you're fighting passionately about something, then chances are you're going to listen to them. And that's how things get in the code. Okay? So hopefully that explained the process, and that's how you got into it. What are you laughing at? G.I. Joe, don't laugh. Tell me. I told y'all this is an open comment zone. So if you disagree with something I say, please don't hide behind the mic. Don't hide behind the keyboard. Let me know. I'm not here to say that their decisions are great. You know what I mean? I'm not here to you like that, right? It's not a Russian collusion. I'm just saying. So it is what it is. So anyway, I won't be going over that again in future episodes. That was just me kind of explaining how the process works, and so that you all are aware of it. Hopefully you got something out of today's information. And again, we'll be doing more of these. So hopefully you subscribe and join, and hopefully you got something out of it. But that's it for today's episode. And I will get the chat thing all worked out and sorted out. Don't worry. I'll get it all figured out. But until next time, folks, please be safe. Take care. Hold your loved ones dear. Remember, tomorrow is never guaranteed. Just saying. Till next time, folks, stay safe.